I just remember, like, what's the earliest age that you can remember of, like, realizing your parents just, like, don't have it together? Like, realizing, like, they don't know this shit either, like
The earliest age where okay,
yeah, like, what's your or your
looking
earliest
back
memory, actually?
I probably could say even earlier, but I think the time when I realized that my parents didn't have it all figured out, I used to have really bad night terrors when I was young.
Oh,
So I would
damn.
wake up in the middle of the night, like, screaming, like, "Ah," and I like, run in my
What's the
parents' room.
difference between a night terror and a nightmare? It's the same thing?
You, like, wake up still, like, freaking out. Like, when you have a nightmare, you'll wake up and be like, "Oh, shit, it was a dream."
Mm.
You have a night terror, and, like, that emotion, like, rolls over almost.
Oh my
And,
gosh.
like, it's just, like, you're still freaking out when you wake up.
So what's your parents
So I would run into their room because I was terrified by these insane dreams. And because of that, I would often like they would eventually let me sleep in there. And then not eventually, but they would let me sleep in
mhm,
there. And then a lot of times I'll wake up in the middle of the night to them talking or sometimes arguing. And then I
okay.
would like listen to their arguments. And although I was like really young, I would notice like the flaws in their arguments. And I'm like,
Wow.
what the like, wait, no. And I almost wanted to be like
Actually,
I
that's
was
not
like
right.
fake sleep. "What are you talking about?" Like, or "That's not true,"
Damn,
or you know what I mean? So
that
that's when I started to realize
sucks.
I was like, "What? Like, the
Yeah,
I
they
thought they were perfect," you
right,
know?
right. That
But
sucks. That's like waking out of a one nightmare and up to another one, like waking from one nightmare into another one.
yeah,
Like,
you're making my childhood look very,
yeah, I
very
mean, I'm
great.
saying, but I'm saying you like go back to sleep and the demon in your dream is like, what the fuck was that?
Like,
Right?
"Oh my god,
Like,
alright, Imma get back
couples
to
therapy
terrorizing
much.
people."
Like, exactly.
What about you?
Imagine
Your
the
demon's like,
demon. It
that's
was like,
hard, anyways.
I thought I was right. I thought I was a monster, but your dad, he's kind of an asshole anyway. Where were we? Off, just office. Awful.
What about you, though?
Me, I think like, I mean, I have a lot. I had a pretty crazy childhood. I think like the earliest memory. So my biological mom used to date this guy named Mr. Judd, and
Judd?
Mr. Judd, yeah, yeah, yeah. And he used to
J-U-D?
Judd, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
She used to date this guy, and he had polio actually. Like he had
Oh,
a
wow.
very, very severe case of polio.
Mhm.
And typically, like with polio, it goes away, but his like never went away. He had it since he was like a kid. So he was like literally paralyzed. He had like those two, those walking sticks where like
Yeah.
that was his whole
Yeah,
deal.
it, like, it's on their forearms.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was, like, literally paralyzed, and, like, we lived with him for, like, a year or 2, and they would get in a lot of fights, and, like, literally, he was paralyzed, but he also had the nerve to be, like, physically abusive, mentally, like, abusive, verbally abusive. He was just
They're just mad at the world.
exactly, right? And, like, I remember thinking, like, some of my earliest thoughts were just like, "Why are we here? Like, why can't" you know what I mean? Like, this man is, like, literally can't even walk,
I
but
can
for
just knock him
some rea
over, but
right!
for some reason, we just let him just
And I'm like
treat us like
and I always think about that, I used to think about that, like, why is my mom, like, standing for that? So it was, like, kinda my earliest thoughts of just like, "Damn, like, maybe something else is going on with her that I don't really know." And, like,
yeah,
just the irony of it, just like the fact that, like, I could not stand this man.
yeah,
Like, she couldn't stand up for herself,
mhm,
and he just couldn't
yeah,
stand
yeah,
up.
period.
Period. What's good? My bad. Sometimes we just, we get into it and then, my bad. You already know what it is. If you're kind of confused, you're looking at the screen like, who are these fine young gentlemen staring back at me having this intellectual deep conversation? Well, I'm gonna go ahead and clear that up for you if you didn't know and you didn't read the damn caption. Okay. It's the Evil Eagle Hour podcast program, audio show, whatever you want to call it, where every episode's the first episode. With co-host Courtney Manawi. I'm your host, Knight. Welcome back.
Let's
Back at
go.
it. What's up, man?
Another one.
Another
No,
one.
sir.
Another
This is gonna
one.
be a good one.
How
This
you
is your
feeling?
idea.
What, this podcast?
This
This
episode.
podcast in general?
Oh yeah, that too. But
No.
yeah, but I
Yeah, it's
think
gonna be
this
good
is
though.
gonna be a really good one. One, because we're actually prepared.
Word.
But two, I feel like it's a concept that actually is the basis of a lot of other things
Mhm.
that come along with psychology and these different things. But we'll
Word.
get into
Word,
that. But
word,
I
word.
think
Well, let
that
me
the concept of um Well, I'll let you say
Yeah, let
that.
me finesse us
But
into
yeah,
it, bro. Don't try
yeah,
to take my damn.
I'm really excited for it. So
Well, no, I was having a conversation with somebody, pretty much how I even thought of this idea. I was having a conversation with somebody, and we actually have these conversations all the time about kind of like the sheer amount of things that we've had to teach ourselves. And like we were
mhm,
joking around at the top, but it's real. Like so many things we've had to teach us. I had to teach myself even the concept of like chivalry, like
mhm,
finances, setting boundaries. Like
yeah,
these are things I've had to literally didn't have guidance on. So I had to teach myself. And the person that I was talking to um was like, yeah, like if nobody teaches you for it, you kind of get trapped in this state. It's almost like arrested development.
mhm.
And I was like, oh, you mean like the show? Like, what's your name, my friend?
My name is James.
Shout out to you, James. Now, the question I want to ask you is, do you have good parental figures? Would you say you have good parental figures?
It's funny you say this. I feel like I'll say this. Parental figures, for the most part, I realize parents are just kids with responsibilities. So a lot of time it's like they're trying their best. So it's like
What about, do you feel like you personally, like growing up, you actually had good parental figures?
I say you could see that they were trying. It wasn't like what do you consider good parenting?
Right, yeah.
Good parental figures can mean so much more. It can mean a lot of things.
Would you say that there are things that you've had to teach yourself as a result of like having parental figures that, as you say, were trying?
Not just me. I feel like just the entire generation, my generation, we kind of just had to figure stuff out. I'm sorry. We like literally we're in this world. We're gonna be in charge of it like a couple years from now. We don't really know what we're doing, and we can't look at the adults for advice because they're doing. Some of them are in the same spot of us, if not worse.
I would think it's rare that somebody has like the perfect parents who raise them correctly.
Hmm.
You know, as soon as they turn 18 or 21 or whatever, they go off into college and they have all the tools that they need. Now, I have met some people like that. It's not impossible, but like a lot of people, especially like black people
Word.
and, people of color,
Yeah.
marginalized people, we don't have those resources. Our parents don't have everything together. So like a lot of us experience it's some form of arrested development.
Yeah. And it's also a weird term too, like arrested
I
development.
don't
Like
really like it.
you don't like that term?
I don't really like the term arrested development because it's like one, when you're under arrest, somebody else put you under arrest,
Mm.
which like
Mm.
I would like to believe we're more in
Control,
control
yeah.
of our lives and that that there is a way out of it.
Well, I think it just captures the idea that you are trapped, whether it be willingly or unwillingly,
Right, right,
like
right, right.
in some concept.
Yeah, but I just think it's more like it's more incomplete. Like you're just
Word.
not finished yet. You still have more work to do.
Right, right.
And I don't know. I just think that's a more positive way to look at it, to
Yeah.
use the language a little bit
I
better.
get that. Yeah, we
Yeah.
do have to be conscious about like the language. So, actually, what's the definition of arrested development, Mr. Definition Man? Lay
Yes,
it on us.
sir. I will
Give me
read
that definition, boy. Let's get it.
it.
Let's get it.
Arrested development refers to a halt in emotional, mental, or psychological growth. This means an individual may be stuck at a certain stage of development and their behavior, emotional processes, responses, or thought patterns may be more characteristic of a child stage than their actual age.
Mm. So just kind of like a lack of maturity or in certain areas.
Yeah, in a nutshell, they haven't developed in a way that is more akin to an adult, or whatever their actual age is. Now, you can't really say a 15-year-old has arrested development because you're still developing. You know what I
Right, you're
mean?
in
But
that
like if
process.
you're, 25, 26,
There's
but you
certain
may be,
signs that you should be like there's certain marks that you should be hitting emotionally,
yeah, and how you think about
intellectually. Yeah, yeah,
things,
yeah.
how you process things, those things should be more mature. They should be more based on, your ideals, keeping order of things and being respectful of, all parties, rather than it being very self-centered as a child would.
Word. Yeah, I mean, and yeah, I mean, playing back to what you said earlier, yes, we know a lot of people that suffer from this in like different ways.
Hmm.
It's so weird. Like off the bat, I think the first thing I thought of was like child stars, weirdly enough.
Hmm.
Well, actually, no, the first thing I thought of was like these grown ass man babies who are like living at home or living with their girl, and their girl's like taking care of them and she's paying the rent. And
Yeah.
somehow they're still getting into arguments because he's like, "You're not spending enough time with me." Like that type of bullshit. Like I literally know somebody who is like currently in that kind of like
I hope they don't
state.
watch this episode.
I hope they do.
Oh,
I
actually,
hope
yeah.
you do, actually. And it's so weird because
No, I
it's
do
like,
know people like that who just refuse to take, some sort of independence with their life.
or
And
accountability overall.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. And then because it can often be brought about by trauma, but it doesn't have to be trauma. It can be actually something seemingly positive. And that's what kind of led me to the idea of like child stars. And it's weird that, something seemingly positive can trap you in this state of arrested development. If you get hit with a lot of things before you're actually mentally ready for it, then it's almost like you get this repressed resentment that comes about. Like since your childhood was somewhat taken away,
Mhm.
you repress and like you have to act out in childish ways because it's almost like you're trying to capture onto that childhood permanently. You
Yeah,
know what I
yeah.
mean?
I mean, like with the child star situation, I mean, it may seem like a positive thing to most people.
Mhm.
Like, oh, you had money, you didn't have to worry about shit. Because most people are struggling with bread.
Yeah.
So like most people think like a child star, oh, you're rich, everybody loves you, you have all this attention on you. But like I think child stars probably have to grow up a lot faster than anybody. And then
Yeah.
as people who like me and you, we had to learn to develop ourselves and we're still doing that. When you have to do that at an earlier age than what may be appropriate, I see why you
Yeah.
would grow resentful. Like me having to grow up earlier than probably I needed to, having to deal with problems that I probably didn't need to at a younger age, that does you start to realize as you get older, like, why was I dealing with
And it
that?
might not
That
even
had nothing to do with me. I was a child. There's no way I could have actually.
and you might not even realize that. You might
Yeah.
not even like it
Or
might
yeah, you just might
yeah.
not, you might not even get the chance to realize that
That's
you were
crazy.
dealing with shit a little bit too early. Like some people almost take pride in that. And who do I have the pleasure of speaking with today?
Cheytown.
All right, Cheytown, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
My question is, do you feel like you had good parents or parental figures growing up?
No.
Okay, you do not. So what do you feel like you had to teach yourself as a result of not having those parental figures?
I had to teach myself how to survive and how to love.
How to survive and how to love. What is when you say survival, like go into detail on that. What do you mean by how to survive?
I really had like a really like lifetime type of story, type of background. So like it wasn't like the best. So like growing up, I had to like feed myself, bathe myself, clean up after myself.
Right.
So like I just had to learn how to be an adult at like 5 years old.
Wow. Wow. That's very powerful stuff. Do you feel like as a result of that, do you feel more empowered now as an adult, or do you feel like that has held you back?
I definitely feel like it held me back because even though like as you grow up so fast that you just stay that way. So like I was acting like I was 40 at 5 years old, and like now I'm 23 and I still feel like I'm just 40 and I'm just stuck in the same position I've always been stuck in because you don't have that role model that actually really pushed you and like gave it for a second when you could be dependent on someone.
It's like you're kind of stuck in like that developmental stage.
Like there's nothing new. Like there's nothing at all. It's just like, oh, that's what you're going through. Yeah, I've been through that.
Right.
It's like at 23 years old, you're saying that to like 40-year-olds, 30-year-olds. Like, oh, I've been through that.
Right. How do you feel like maybe you might not be a parent, or you may be a parent,
I am.
but you are a parent. Okay. So how do you look at your kids and to create something different for them?
It's hard, I would say. Like, I love my kids regardless. I don't
course.
regret them. But, like, when it comes to, like, loving them and showing them, I talk to them more as adults more than I wish I did.
Okay.
Because I have to remember, like, they're babies.
Right.
And I didn't get that chance to just be a kid.
Mhm.
So sometimes I have to let them be a kid.
Okay.
And sometimes I feel like, why are you doing that? You shouldn't be doing that. Like, at my age, I was doing this. I was cleaning up.
Right.
Like, why are you not, like, being me? So it's just like, but wait, they're not being me because they have me.
Right.
Like, they have a mom.
Right.
But like it could definitely come back in a lot of different ways. I mean,
It can manifest itself in like some type forms of self-sabotage. You're just like, I'm gonna spend this money, or I'm gonna do whatever I gotta because I never got to experience my childhood, so I'm gonna do this. Like,
yeah, I mean, how it manifests is like personality disorders.
Mm.
Um, and that's the scary part about it, because a lot of personalities disorders, they're rooted in some type of trauma or a lack of, or not only trauma, but also abandonment, neglect, or abuse when you're younger and during those developmental stages. And so when you're stuck in that stage for too long, that child self in you grows, and it grows almost faster than the adult version of you. And so you have this like personality that's a little bit warped, and it's
Wow.
more inflated on a certain side that's like, whether it's like narcissism or borderline personality or antisocial, whatever it may be,
Damn.
these
You're
personalities
triggering me.
disorders.
I don't like this.
Nah, I mean
Cut the
it's
cameras. Since I am triggered, let's lean into it. In what ways do you feel like you are suffering from like arrested development? What areas of your life? Because you said it wasn't like a blanketed thing. It can be in
Yeah,
specific parts,
it
right?
can be like exactly emotional, cognitive, all the different facets or whatever. And for me, the way I may be suffering from arrested development, um, there's certain things when it comes to taking care of myself. Now,
Mm.
obviously, I bathe and brush my teeth and
Of
shit like
course,
that.
yes.
But
Hope so.
like cooking is it causes a lot of stress for me.
Really, like literal like anxiety builds up whenever you
Bro,
think about the concept of
when
having
I
to cook
think
for yourself.
about me trying to prepare a meal, I'm like, holy shit. I mean, I make my oatmeal every day, but that's like mad easy. You just like
Word.
pour the packets, you pour the milk in there, cut up some fruit, and like you're done.
I'm not arrested at all. I'm balling.
You haven't made any steps to try to like.
I had apples and peanut butter earlier, so you know what I'm saying. I made a little bit of food. You know, I made that.
What's the feeling that it provokes? Like what's the issue?
What's the issue for cooking? It's just like when you make the food, you smelling it, and then like by the time you eat it, you like it don't taste good. I mean, like it don't taste as good.
What about you though?
I was gonna say, well, when you said financially, that ring a bell for me. I'm like, yeah, definitely financially. Like, and it's not in the degree of a child star, but just literally anybody. Like if you go from not having money and having everything being provided for you to like getting a job and then having money, if there's no one there to facilitate that transition and be like, okay, well, now that you have money, you should do this with it, save this or so and so, you just literally kind of think of it in an immature state, almost like, okay, well, I'll just buy what I want. I'll
Yeah.
buy whatever I want. And yeah, it
Yeah.
takes you getting older to be like, oh, and sometimes it happens way later where you're like, damn, like I still have this immature mind state around finances and around money. I still just buy what I want. And then it gets to the point where, you're living paycheck to paycheck, even though you make a very good, living wage and
Yeah.
like that. So
Yeah.
it really
And
sucks.
yeah, I mean, I would give yourself a break a little bit on that, because I feel like the age that we're at is kind of the age in which we start to develop those types of skills. But if somebody was 40, or I would say
Word.
maybe 35, or I don't know what the actual age is where you should be financially, at least a little bit financially literate or safe.
Yeah.
But we're kind of talking about more mild states of like arrested development.
But the thing is, it's like, I don't know if I would even give myself that slack because I have the awareness of it. Like once you have the awareness of it, then it becomes a different thing. Then it's like, okay, now you're tipping the scale into self-sabotage because now you know and you're not making conscious steps to change those things. So then it's like,
right.
all right, that's when I'm like, okay, that's arrested development because you're like trapped. You even know that you have this setback, you have this, but you can't find your way out. You can't mentally break yourself out
It's
of
a
that
cell
prison.
that you don't have the key for.
Yeah. It's interesting. I like I think about this. There's also like almost a comfort in that immaturity too, though, because I think that kind of we were talking about, if you don't experience that childhood, then you have that repressed resentment that you might not even be conscious of.
Mhm.
And some part of that is comfortable because as a kid, it's almost nostalgic. As a kid, you're being taken care of. So you don't even you don't have to think about your issues. You don't
Yeah,
have to
it's
think
your
about your
comfort
problems.
zone.
That's your comfort zone.
Yeah, it's your
Right.
comfort zone.
So, but and a part of maturity is literally pushing yourself out of your comfort
Or
zone.
knowing when you need to be out of your comfort zone.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly. It's
So
crazy.
like when you think about, not being prepared for life,
Hmm.
not having the tools, not having that toolkit given to you, you don't have your tool belt, you
Hmm.
don't have all the shit that you need for life. Like, how does that make you feel?
I mean, I've definitely gone through my different phases. Like I've been like mad at
Yeah,
God. I've been mad at my
yeah.
parents.
That's
Like
how I feel too.
really,
Like, it's just like a lot of anger and sadness that comes from it.
right?
Because you almost feel like cheated. You feel like
Literally,
it's not fair. Like,
yeah,
I should have these things. And you feel like why wasn't these things given to me, or why didn't anybody think of this? Why was I able to think about this all
right,
these years after I grew up and nobody thought about it
right.
at any point in time before
And
this
it's a what?
and stepped in, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
and of course, like, I feel like when you start to mature and you start to see, how your parents aren't perfect, like, there is a moment where you kind of like mad at them, and you're just like
sure,
what, like, because you're realizing that they're human. But like in most of your life, especially when you're growing up, like, they're your parents, that's mom and dad. So they're
yeah.
like they're emotionally supposed to be like your superheroes. They're supposed to be the people who care for you and make sure that you're good. And so coming to a deeper realization that they also made a lot of mistakes, and they also
And
like
sometimes, and that doesn't even help. Sometimes it's like a lot of people will be like, "Oh, well, nobody gets to pick where they come from, and everybody gets, thrown in this without, like we were saying in the beginning, we just get thrown in it, like
mm,
fucking The Sims, and it's just like figure it out, and it's like, and it's like, well, that's supposed to make you feel better. Okay, well, maybe I'm a little less alone in this world, but sometimes it doesn't make you feel better. It's like, well, we're all fucked. Like, what
yeah,
do you
like
mean?
like it if everybody's in the same place, like, it doesn't make it any less fucked up. Like, it's
Right.
just I mean, like, yeah, maybe everybody's dealing with it, but that doesn't make existence any easier.
Right.
What do you feel like your parents or your parental figures have taught you that has made a difference in your life?
I feel like my father taught me like respect and principle. He kind of taught me how to maneuver certain things and how to interact with people.
Mhm.
So, I'd be like, I think he really taught me how to see life differently, because you can only learn so much things from school, social media, and your peers. But what my father taught me is like discipline.
Mhm.
And my mother taught me like kindness, empathy, compassion. So I feel like on both different ends, they taught me two things that came together to make me a better rounded person.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. What do you feel like would have been your destiny, or what would have happened if you didn't have those parental figures?
I feel like I would have went down a dark path, because I definitely everyone has like a crazy point in life, where they think they know everything and they want to rebel against their parents.
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to figure it out right now. But I think, if my dad wasn't strict and my mom wasn't, kind, I think I would be heartless, and I think I would be lost. I don't know, I think I'd be a degenerate, to be honest.
Yeah. Do you feel like, as far as parenting, and do you feel like we've had to figure out a lot of things on our own, or do you feel like parents in this generation have been doing a good job?
Nah, it's bad right now. There's literally there's cats younger than me having kids, and they're making TikToks with them, bro. I know mad kids, they don't even know how to wash a dish. So it's bad. I don't know if it's new. I don't know if it's been like this, but it's bad. Like even me, but I don't really even have hope for marriage or children, because the way the world's been, it's basically hell on earth. So
Yeah.
But then the processing of that,
Mhm.
and the next point that you're supposed to get to is the maturity aspect of it. When you're mature, you're able to see that nuance and hopefully take an optimistic view of it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
But how do we handle
Well,
this? Like,
I mean, arrested development has to do with you not like developing as an adult because your parents, and I won't just blame it all on parents because I don't like that.
sure.
Like, it's
Some people don't even
a
have any
child,
parents. Like,
yeah, like some people don't even have their mom and dads.
yeah.
And I like to believe the idea that like a child is raised by the community. It's not just like the parents, but it's also the teachers in the classroom.
Mm,
It's also auntie and uncle, the little things that they give in there, and everybody else.
yeah.
Um, so
Like, what's the antidote? Like, how
the
do we?
antidote, so if like you're still in this child place, you have to almost step back in time and start to reparent yourself. So like that's
Mm,
what the concept of reparenting
reparenting.
comes in, because you are becoming your own parent, like in your head, and almost teaching yourself the things
Wow.
that you need in order to develop. Like you have to almost give yourself those missing pieces. You have to fill in the gaps. You have to fill in the holes that they missed, in order to, develop and become a
Interesting.
more mature adult and a functioning adult in society. Yeah.
Interesting. Reparenting. Yeah, I've heard that phrase before.
Let me give you the
Seems like
definition.
something. Yeah, you got a formal definition for me? Oh, my boy ready. Hold on. Is my boy ready?
Yes, sir.
Stop
Okay.
playing.
Reparenting is a therapeutic process that involves learning to provide for yourself, the nurturing guidance and protection that you may have not received or inconsistently received as a child. It's a form of self-healing and self-care that focuses on meeting your own emotional
Mm.
needs. The goal of reparenting is to address unmet needs from childhood and resolve the emotional pain or trauma that may be affecting a person's adult life. This can include feelings of abandonment, neglect, or an abuse.
Mm. Wow. Yeah. I mean, just like if you, for one, to even know that that is a real concept that you can like
That
look
people
up.
are doing every day.
Yeah, that
That
people
people
are
are learning
literally are
about,
actively
writing
doing.
about,
Facts.
everything. Like, I mean, I hope that we gave y'all a tool. Like, you know what I mean? I hope that's one of the tools.
Even that. I mean, we're
It,
gonna keep talking about it, but like
yeah.
it's the fact that it's even a concept that you can look up is already helpful because it's like,
Mhm.
okay,
Okay.
there's something to
There's
this.
something to do. I have some agency
Yeah.
over my life.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
not. I'm not arrested anymore. Like this is a
Mm.
key that can get me out of the cell, and then I'll be inside just the jail warehouse, and then I gotta go get some more keys. But,
Facts. Do
but
you
like,
have like so? I mean, do you have any other background information about like where the concept came from? Is it
yeah, I mean, it was originally developed in the 70s. I honestly can't pronounce his name, but Jackie Sheaf. He used it.
Keith?
He used it in a technique in transactional analysis. Um, we won't dive into that, but it
Right.
was developed in the 70s. It's about 50 years old.
Damn, so it's old.
Yeah, yeah, it's about
I-
a 50-year-old concept. But I mean, psychology is fairly young in itself, so we're always developing and changing the ways that we look at the mind.
So when we talk about like self care, that entire concept
Hmm.
is wrapped into the whole. So reparenting is a part of self care almost. Then
Yeah, I mean,
seems
yeah, it's
like
a big part of self-care. I
yeah.
mean, like it's getting you up to par. It's getting you up to where you need to be. I
Mm,
mean, and self-care goes beyond that. It goes into your future and where you are right now. But I think reparenting is hugely focused on your past and where you may be missing some things
right.
from your childhood and developing emotional. It's really, I think a lot of times it deals with like, how you respond to things emotionally, but I think the way you think is also wrapped into that as well.
Right, right. Because you can't always think away emotions, but there's certain things, and that kind of leads me to think about the different ways that the different self care tactics that I utilize on myself. And the main one that I kind of established a couple years back, and I didn't even notice that I was doing it. I knew it was a thing, but I recently noticed, like, wow, I've completely changed the way that I've talked to myself. Like, I positive self-talk is something that I consistently practice.
Yeah.
When I wake up in the morning, weirdly enough, I literally say to myself, "Oh man, I'm about to have a good day today, boy." Like literally tell myself like, "Oh, it's about to be
Yeah.
another good one." I'll
Yeah.
go to sleep. I'm like, "I can't wait for tomorrow. I can't wait." For no reason, but just because I realized like no, I can just say I'll have a good day.
Right.
I don't have to put that in anybody else's hands.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna have a good day.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
say, put it out there.
And I
You know?
love that's like the best thing ever when you can like speak to yourself that way. Like when you can look in the mirror and just like start hyping yourself up. And you're just
Yeah.
like, let's go. Let's go.
It
Like,
seems so
I'm,
stupid.
and it feels like I remember first learning how to, like positive self-talk. It feels like phony and fake because you're so used to talking to yourself another
Mhm.
way. So it's like it's a bit dissociative
Yeah.
until it's not. And then when it's not, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Because once you get past that hump of removing the negative self-talk that you hear in your ear and you actually replace it and it's not like this dual thing. Because when you do first get into that positive self-talk and I guess reparenting in general, there's this duality that you feel because you're moving from one version of yourself to another. And so
It's probably some
as you're
resistance in there too.
moving, there's that resistance, and we talked about that in the
Mhm.
Sigmund Freud episode. But uh, there does come a time after that when that positive self-talk is actually integrated into you, where you actually it's really hard to talk to yourself negatively. It's hard to not hype
Right,
yourself
you'll,
up,
like, call yourself out almost, that's what
yeah,
I
you're just
do.
like, why are you talking to yourself
Yeah.
that way? Like, and that inner parent like becomes more established. Yeah,
Shit.
and it's beautiful.
That's
Right?
lit.
And that's one I think we both share that, that part of development that, it really shines out.
Yeah.
What are some other ways that you've reparented yourself
I'd
or other
say
techniques that, that
definitely setting boundaries, and that was a tricky
Mhm.
one too, because
Mhm.
when it comes to setting boundaries, sometimes your parents accidentally, cross those boundaries. Like, it's
Oh
not,
yeah.
even if you have good parents, it doesn't mean that they taught you how to set like proper boundaries.
Yeah.
And like, I didn't really have a great, parental situation overall, but so I didn't really have anybody to help me learn what the concept of setting boundaries is.
I think a lot
But
of parents like struggle with that too with their
yeah,
kids. I mean, I could imagine it's probably hard as hell. You got this little you running around
right.
and you're just like trying to make sure that they're good or just doing you're just projecting whatever onto them,
Right.
whether it's your love or your whatever.
And the transition of you taking care of them, so you're providing for them, and you're also, there's a part of that is telling them what to do, like,
Right.
so they don't have autonomy. So there's a point where they start to demand that autonomy, and that line gets really messy.
The kid starts to
The kid starts to demand that autonomy.
yeah,
It's
and
like,
needs
I'm a
it
person,
in
right?
order to develop.
Right.
You know what I
And
mean?
so those establishing those wants and those needs and saying, like, this is me and this is you, and you can't tell me now. Now you could in the past, but now you can't tell me
Yeah.
who to be. That is difficult for a lot of parents.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
If you're not going into it with the idea, like, I'm creating a separate person from me. I know this is my kid. I brought them into this world. But if you don't have the idea, like, all right, but at a certain age,
You got to do you.
yes.
Yeah, or you need to start doing you. You need, and they, I think a parent who's mindful of these things, they will start to slowly, um, give their child more autonomy,
Yeah.
and to the point where when it's time to leave the nest, that they can fully fly on their own.
Yeah, but it's like, what's the time? What's the time where you do that? And
Yeah.
then there's the world. It's you, your kid, and also the world. Your
I mean,
world is
they-
gonna, like,
A lot of people like to say is like once a child like in preteens, like from that like 10 to 13 stage is when that children start to become more independent. I
Mm.
mean, younger, you start mimicking people and then you start really starting to have an idea of like your own self. But I think you can, your brain develops to a point around that teenage age when you can start doing things on your own. And I think that is probably the starting point of when like
you
that
should start to kind
autonomy.
of pull back as a
Yeah,
parent.
as a parent. And I mean, what the fuck do we know? Like, we're not
Yeah, I'm
parents,
not.
but, like, but just based off of research, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? That 10 to 13 age is when, those things need to be important. Because for me, setting boundaries is also really, really hard. When I first even learned what boundaries even were.
Yeah.
Because like you said, my parents would overstep my boundaries too in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
So
And being taught, like, knowing how somebody should treat you too is like somehow is a part of those
Mhm.
boundaries. Like, your parents are the first ones that kind of show you how you're supposed to be treated. So
yeah.
if they treat you in a certain way, then it's like you're always going to think that you deserve certain
Right,
types
and
of
even
treatment.
knowing what boundaries to set, where to even put them in the
Right.
ground, that's a whole learning process in its own, because you can end up building your own jail cell. You setting up all these fucking boundaries,
Wow.
and then nobody can get to you.
Mhm.
And then what happens then? You know what I mean? So like
Stupid.
setting boundaries is almost an art in itself. You have to learn what is a healthy boundary and when can you let people go beyond certain boundaries, because there's different boundaries for different people. Some
Right.
people are closer, so they can get beyond some boundaries that you have for other people.
Right. It's especially in a relationship,
Mhm.
and I say an intimate relationship specifically, it's a negotiation. You're constantly kind of negotiating boundaries, and there's certain things that you shouldn't accept, and there's certain things, yeah, like you said, certain people can do certain things that other people can't do. The reparenting shit, like,
Yeah.
through therapy, I'm realizing that
like I'm starting to develop like this sixth sense. Like I'll have a thought and then I'll have like the reparenting thought. It's almost like an extra downloaded app that runs in the background. Like I'm like, what's my inner parent think about this, right?
Yeah, it's like you're like a super ego, or like you're like it's just another level of conscious. Like you said, it's like another operating system.
Right, just running underlying system running on over top of all the other apps. Like I'm realizing and that's why I'm realizing it's more about healing. Like if you grow up in an environment where, you know, for whatever reason, your parents or whoever's supporting you doesn't provide that proper support, then it turns into you growing up with a bunch of different coping mechanisms, just coping in a bunch of different ways.
All these programs that are like almost like bugs.
And are outdated. It's like, you never really like upgrade them and shit like that. So it's like,
you don't do no type of like system cleaning.
Right.
Or like, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
you get to that point. And so like if you don't actually like, the coping mechanisms are always going to be temporary solutions. So if you don't actually go in and do like the mental and emotional work or the surgery, like
the reparenting is like actually head on addressing the issue. Like it's not, you know, doing one thing that like kind of helps it, but not really, which is like kind of what coping is. Like if you're smoking all the time, like it's a way of like helping you feel a little bit better, but you're not actually addressing the issue that's making you feel bad.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're addressing the cause but not the problem.
Right.
Or you're addressing the effect but not the problem.
Exactly. Like
and reparenting is like addressing it at the root.
What techniques are you utilizing in terms of like reparenting?
Like you said, positive talk, setting boundaries. Another one that was really, really profound for me was like inner child journaling. And it's essentially just a process of writing to your inner child. And that's what most people do. And then I kind of remixed it a little bit. But we'll start there. And so writing to your inner child, a lot of people like the practice of writing a letter to their child and speaking on the things that that child didn't get. And reassuring that child self and writing this letter and because you know what your child self did and didn't
You're
have.
not gonna fucking make me cry in here, all right? Don't. All right, stop talking.
No, it's
that is crazy.
No, it's
What?
a very emotional process. I mean, and like a lot of times when I've done these different journaling sessions, like sometimes I'll just stop in the middle. I'm like,
What?
I'm gonna take a break because
Bro.
it's a lot to process. But it echoes in your head when you write it. Because for one, when you're writing something, there's a certain thing, when you manifest things, but you're also writing physically, not just typing and not just speaking. Because when you write it, everything is going in your brain. So when you write it, you are really establishing new things for yourself. When you're writing to your younger child, you are actually speaking to your younger self emotionally.
It's kind of
and it's actually deeply going into your head to the
free
point.
association.
Right. And so when you go more and more into it, you do different journaling sessions, then you start to really feel like your child self is having those needs met, and you can move past the resentment or however you're feeling about not having those needs met. But the way that I remixed it was, I mean, it was, I didn't remix it too much, but I was more so giving advice to my younger self because for me growing up, I did have to do a lot of things on my own, and I didn't mind that independence because I was kind of like a boss baby at certain points. So I actually like to do things on my own, but I would get hurt a lot along the way, or I didn't have guidance, or people didn't give me the wisdom that I needed. So I would give advice to my younger self, and it almost feels like a quantum thing. Like it's like I'm actually receiving it like when I was younger. You know what I mean? And then I also flip it and talk to my future self and ask for my future self for advice
Or some interstellar shit.
on some interstellar shit. And so like now I have this theory that like if I talk to my future self long enough, and
listening.
Right, and my current self will start to receive advice from my future self. That's my theory, though.
Am I high? What is happening? Like That's nuts. Yes, I love that though. I love that though.
Yeah,
I feel
it's an amazing experience though because you really feel grounded
Mm.
because you're talking to your younger self, you're talking to your future self, and you're processing it all right now. And so you almost feel comforted by knowing that you exist in the past, the present, and the future.
Do you feel like you had good or supportive parental figures?
No, absolutely not.
No.
No.
Okay. So because of that, what do you think, what are some things that you feel like you've had to teach yourself as a result?
Absolutely everything, bro. I had to figure out my own taxes. Had to figure out how to wipe my own ass. You know, that's the way it works. You got to clean up your own crib. You don't have a mother or a father to be like, yo, clean up your shit.
So from a very early age, you feel like you didn't have that support or those parental figures. Do you wish you would have had that, or is it is what it is type of situation?
I just think it is what it is now. Instead of dwelling on this bullshit, I'm like, oh, if my father did this or my mother did that, it's not going to change the fact that I still got to pay my bill next week. You know what I'm saying? I'm not just saying like, whatever, you can suck it up and deal with it, because I did, you know. Everybody copes with things differently. Everybody got different ways to like
deal with it.
You know what I mean? So like, my way of dealing with it is just being like, all right, it happened. It is what it is. Let's move forward. What can I do better next time? So
I love that healthy self-soothing. This is on topic. It's a little off topic, but it's on topic. I've seen this epidemic of grown ass people sucking their thumbs. Have you seen this?
Oh no.
I have been seeing this
Recently?
recently. Yes, I've seen this so many times now in New York. It's mainly women, but they'll just be like literally sucking their peek and they'll just be like sucking their thumbs. I'm like,
What the hell?
that's a disgusting
Yes,
method of self-soothing. That was just like
something happened during the oral phase.
weirdly enough, right? I'm like thinking like that's like a weird self-soothe. That's like me every
That's
time I
so
get
nasty.
like I get anxious and I just start licking my palm. Like, why would anybody be
Like
sucking
licking your paws
thumb
out.
as a grown ass person? That's so weird.
Yeah, that's actually disgusting. Because we live in New York. Like your hands are dirty as soon as you step outside.
So that right,
Like
disgusting.
Sucking on a fucking turnstile.
That's crazy.
Turnstile germs.
So like, oh my God. All right, I gotta get out of this mentally. So okay, inner child journaling. You kind of talked about guided imagery almost. I don't know if there's any other techniques and tactics that we could talk about before we get out of here.
I mean, guided imagery is something I did in therapy, but with my first therapist. And personally, I don't really like it because you just put yourself in a scenario that of something that happened like when you were younger and almost.
Oh, so that's not like the inner child thing. That's not like projecting
in
your
in
future
a
self?
way it is, but like guided imagery is more focused on you closing your eyes and imagining yourself being there. It's almost like, not being hypnotized, but like you're taking yourself there
Mm.
to that very moment. When with the journaling
Of
it's
trauma?
more- yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah, and to kind of like get, teach yourself out of that. But or like, if you're doing it with a therapist, like they'll say, okay, take you there. Okay, so how were you feeling at that time? And you start to pour out
Oh.
everything and process it as if you were right there. And
How
that
are you
is
feeling? That's why people don't like therapy. Like,
yeah. I mean,
how are you
it's
feeling right now?
yeah, and it is scary. Like
Bad.
it's a scary thing to bring yourself back because it's not like you are who you like when you take yourself back to that moment, emotionally you're almost back at that stage.
Right.
Like you're back how you felt during that time.
But you're not though.
But
You're
you're
an
not.
adult, right? So you have that power. You can
Right. So
kinda-
I mean, yeah, you can't pull yourself out of it, but it's weird. You know what I mean? To feel how you felt during that traumatic or, stressful time in your life, but to now be an adult seeing it when you come out of that
Mm.
therapeutic session, it just leaves you super raw. You feel like you just had surgery.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
like
and
emotional
that was
surgery.
really, really hard for me. Like when I first started therapy, like my chest would actually hurt.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But you get through it.
You get through it. I guess as an adult, yeah. That's the power you have as an adult. So yeah, there's different reparenting techniques. I know about like creating a safe space. I know there's like role playing things. There's one in particular that I want to talk about before we get out of here: somatic practices. So body oriented practices that help you reconnect with your physical self, as
Mm.
trauma often leads to the disconnection from the body.
Yeah,
Um,
I've known and met people who felt very disconnected from their body, very dissociated from their body
because of trauma.
because of trauma that
events.
happened to them. And a lot of times it's like physical or like sexual abuse,
Yeah.
which is it's really sad because I feel very in touch with my body, and I can't imagine not feeling like that connection to it. And I know it's really hard to gain that back. But like, things like yoga, dancing.
Mhm.
Dancing is a big
That's a
one.
big one for people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very, very big
I can
one.
the euphoria and that sense of connection with the body that people experience when they dance, and just like the looks on their faces, like that's something I just love seeing. I love watching dance videos on YouTube for that very
love
reason.
dancing. I mean, I repost, I comment. I'm like low key seeping into.
You
the
do love
dance.
dancing,
I
bro.
love dancing, and it's like when when you're a baby, you know how to dance. I mean, like before you do the universal wave, you're just like.
Oh yeah, you just be bouncing.
Even as a baby, you know what I
fact.
mean? And it's a very like universal thing that we do as humans, and
Yeah.
dancing is so healing. And that's why I dance every day. It's probably because I'm fucking trying to cope.
Life, you're just like crying. Head ass boy. Doing folks. Head ass boy. So yes, I love this, man. I love this. I wish we could talk about this forever, but we do got to get out of here. So the ending, I guess we always like to end on something, right? Like what's the ending idea, I guess, for me is the idea that, for one, as we were talking about before, and now that I know this to be an idea and a concept, it kind of gives you that power, like you can now start to reclaim the power that might have been taken from you as a youth.
Mhm.
And once you realize, again, from the top, your parents are just fucking sim characters, okay? They don't know what they're doing. Just God's just up there fucking. And once you realize that, it's like, okay, forgive them. Forgive them, right? And now you have the power now.
Yeah, and it when it comes to your parents, I mean, it is hard to forgive your parents. I mean,
Don't get me wrong. You're right.
speaking
Yeah.
from experience.
Facts.
That is definitely hard to forgive your
I'm
parents.
still doing it. I don't know.
And honestly, you don't have to. You do have to take control of yourself. though.
True.
You do have to develop yourself, and if
Bars.
you want to, because a lot of people, I think these days, sometimes they'll come to me and say that they feel stuck. And I felt stuck
Come
before.
to you for what? You a fucking therapist? What they coming?
No,
to
I mean, I have honest conversations with people
Word.
all the time. So, so they'll tell me that they may feel stuck in their life, or like in some way. And I think to get yourself out of that arrested developmental stage in your life, to break free of that understanding what reparenting is and how it looks and all the different practices that you can do, can help you heal. It can help you feel more in control of yourself to actually feel like an adult.
Right.
And you turn 21, you turn 25, you turn 30. It doesn't really matter if you don't feel like an adult.
Yeah.
And I think feeling like an adult is very important, and it's empowering.
And people run away from the
People
idea
run
of
away from it, but
feeling
it's
like an
actually
adult.
great.
Yeah.
People who develop in that way, they talk about how empowering it is to feel like an adult, to feel like you can actually take control and take care of yourself. And like the difference between
Adults
being an adult
and a kid
and being a child is how you operate, the basis of like your operation. And like an adult operates from respect, out of order, out of care and love, and what else?
How
do I have
to
in my note?
your own
And
needs.
just and your higher values and your
Yeah.
morals. And a child normally acts more selfishly. And when you're a child, that's okay because that's what you need at that time. But as an adult, there's times when it's hard to not act selfishly, and then those signs. So when it's really hard to not be selfish, and you are acting like a child, and not in a bad or condescending way, but in a realistic way, you may be suffering from arrested development, and you may need to reparent yourself.
And just know that you have the power. You got that power, boy. God damn. I feel good. You feel good?
That was a great fucking episode.
I feel good, bro. I feel like I'm ready to go out there and claim this power. You feel me? I'm feeling reclaim myself.
Want to dance?
What?
Want to dance?
Yeah, we can dance after. We'll dance in the outro. But you already know what it is. It's the EEH Hour podcast, program, audio show, whatever you want to call it, with co-host Cody Manawi. I'm your host, Knight. We're going to see you the next week. Make sure you follow us, at Knight Can't Rap.
Mine is at Cody Manawi, CODIE. MONOWI.
You already know we're gonna be back on your ass with it.
I'm gonna break something if I